High Court has agreed to hear a pair of cases challenging state and federal laws that define marriage as the union of one man and one woman. Tax experts at Marcum LLP say this could open the door to equal tax treatment for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender couples and families. Nanette Miller, head of Marcum's LGBT practice group, joins me from San Francisco. Ms. Miller, welcome to Bottom Line. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
The Supreme Court's agreed to hear two cases, as we pointed out, one of which involves DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which denies to gay Americans who are legally married the same tax, health, and pension benefits as heterosexual couples. What's been the economic impact of these prohibitions?
Well, what happens is they cannot file a joint return. So in many cases, their individual income taxes are much higher than they would be if they were able to file a joint return. And the real tragedy is on the estate taxes, where they do not get the benefit of a marital deduction and could pay hundreds of thousands more in estate taxes.
Ms. Miller, if there is a split decision, states and not the federal government would get to decide on same-sex marriage ceremonies, how do you see the potential split decision?
Well, I'm not a lawyer or a Supreme Court follower, but if there's a split decision about whether states can marry or not, it would go back to the state level, and the various states would decide who could marry.
Well, earlier this year, New York City officials said that the city gained $259 million in economic benefits from same-sex marriages in the first year of the law, and this includes marriage license fees, guests coming to the city to attend the ceremonies, hotel rooms booked by those guests, etc. Would you expect to see that same economic diversity replicated in other cities if same-sex marriage is allowed nationwide?
Absolutely, and I'm sure you just looked to Washington State today, that's been on the news with their having the first day of their same-sex marriages, the people at City Hall, the licenses, the dresses, the events. It's going to be huge for the various cities and states.
Well, if same-sex marriage rights are granted nationwide, how much money would the federal government receive in taxes from gay couples, and how does the marriage penalty that heterosexual couples face come into play? You just mentioned that, but let's talk about it a little bit more.
Sure. Let's maybe talk about an individual tax return. In an instant where you have one partner with no income and another partner with, say, $250,000, they could save in taxes $8,000 to $9,000. So in certain instances, the federal government would be getting less money. If they were making about the same amount of money, then there is a marriage tax penalty, and the federal government might get an additional $2,000 to $3,000. And then for some people where they're not taxed now on Social Security and they're filing a joint return, their taxes would actually go up. So it's going to be all over the board as to whether the government actually nets out more money or less money in the individual tax matter. But the main thing is there will be equality, and everybody will be paying taxes on an equal basis in the country.
Ms. Miller, for those same-sex couples who have children, how would marriage affect their household financial situation and their ability to adopt legally?
Well, adoption on the same sex, they would be allowed to adopt legally. Some states right now you're allowed to, and some states you're not allowed to. Again, they would be able to be an exemption on the tax return. So from that standpoint, as opposed to being an exemption on one spouse's return, they would be on a joint return, and they would have the benefit of the lower tax rates.
One of this nation's current fiscal concerns, as you know, is Social Security. If same-sex couples are given the right to marry, they'd be eligible for benefits. How would that impact the solvency of Social Security? Well,
it's the people that paid in now would have their spouses eligible for Social Security. So I think that there would be additional Social Security benefits paid out. But, you know, don't forget, Social Security is based on what people pay in. So it just means that what people pay in, their spouses are able to get, just like other traditionally married couples.
Ms. Miller, we have about a minute left. How do you see the Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage? Is the 1967 Loving versus Virginia ruling, which struck down interracial marriage, the precedent that same-sex marriage advocates are hoping this court applies?
I think it is, and I think that one of the good things is the court is strong constitutionalists and follow the Constitution. And so I'm very hopeful that when they review all the facts and look at prior cases, that they will strike it down.
Nanette Miller. She is head of Marcum LLP's LGBT practice group, joining us from San Francisco, discussing the economic and tax implications of same-sex marriage. Ms. Miller, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Up next, our daily market check-in with taking